75 priests, more than 300 children, and one survivor says she was only 5 years old when it started. That is what a major Rhode Island investigation just laid bare inside the Catholic Diocese of Providence. Not one priest, not one church, not one terrible moment, but decades. According to the Associated Press and Rhode Island's Attorney General, the investigation found that about 75 clergy members sexually abused more than 300 children since 1950, and officials say the real number may be even higher. And that is what makes this story so disturbing. Because once you hear a number like that, it almost starts to feel abstract. Until you remember, those were children. Children with names. Children with families. Children who had to grow up carrying what happened to them. AP reported that one survivor, Ann Hagen Webb, said she was just a kindergartner when a parish priest began abusing her at school. The abuse continued from the time she was 5 years old until she was 12. She remembered crying before school, dreading the bus ride, and carrying the trauma for years. When she later came forward, she said the diocese treated her with suspicion instead of support. AP reported that Webb said, "For 32 years, the diocese has called me not credible." After the report came out, she said it felt like vindication. And that changes the whole weight of the story. Because this is no longer just a report about church archives. It is a child crying before school because she knows what may be waiting for her there. It is someone spending decades trying to be believed. It is a life shaped by something that should never have happened in the first place. Another survivor, Claude Leboeuf, told AP that the report helps break what he called the church's wall of secrecy. But he also said survivors still need real help, therapy, support, accountability, because the damage does not simply disappear with time. And that is where this story gets even darker. Because investigators say this was not just about abusive priests. It was also about the institution around them. The Attorney General's report says the diocese followed a well-worn pattern of protecting priests and protecting the church instead of protecting children. AP reported that complaints were often minimized. Some accused priests were transferred, and church leaders were repeatedly more focused on reputation than on victims. That is what turns this from a scandal into something much worse. Because people expect evil from predators. What they do not expect is silence from the people who were supposed to stop them. The investigation began in 2019 after the diocese agreed to turn over records dating back to 1950. Rhode Island's Attorney General says investigators reviewed church files and other evidence over several years and concluded the abuse stretched across generations. And even with all of that, only a small fraction of these cases ever ended in criminal court. The Attorney General's office says 4 current and former priests were criminally charged during the investigation. But when you compare that with a report documenting roughly 75 clergy abusers and more than 300 children, that gap becomes part of the horror too. Because that means most of this story did not end with arrests. For many victims, it ended in silence or disbelief, or years of waiting for someone, anyone, to finally admit what happened. And officials say even this report may still understate the real scale. AP reported that the true number of victims is likely higher because some survivors never come forward. Some records are incomplete, and some accused clergy died before they could ever be fully confronted. That is one of the hardest things about stories like this. The public hears the number, but the number is not the story. The story is what those children lived through. The story is what survivors carried for decades. And the story is how long a trusted institution failed them. The diocese has said it cooperated with the investigation and says there are no credibly accused clergy currently in active ministry. It also argues the report does not reflect the church as it exists today. But for a lot of people, that does not erase what the report describes. It does not undo the years. It does not undo the trauma. And it does not answer why children were left unprotected for so long. Because that is what this is really about. Not just abuse, but failure. Failure to report. Failure to remove. Failure to protect. Failure to put children above the institution's image. And that may be the darkest part of all. Not just what those priests were accused of doing, but how long the system around them kept failing children.